Aloha mai kako, and thank you for joining Seashell Surf for another exciting adventure. I want to talk a little bit more in depth about HANAPÄPÄ and the murals that we have that depict history here in this town and perhaps in other places of Hawaii. The story is about a young woman who was fishing, and because Hawaiians are very conscientious about taking only what they need, she had caught an abundance of fish and began to cry. Pele came across the woman and told her to rub the white crystals on the skin of the fish, and they would be preserved and they could be saved. So May is the beginning of salt making season, in which the clay alaya beds are made for the salt water brine to be put in and evaporated for pa'akai, which means solidified salt water or salt. This mural depicts here, I wanted to just point out to you that the rectangular white areas in the mural are the salt ponds surrounded by the clay beds. And as you can see, the community comes together and they talk story about good things while they are processing the salt. Anytime that you are working with your hands to produce a product that's going to be for yourself or somebody else, you always want to make sure that you are in a good mood. Your mana or your spiritual power goes into the product or the gift that you're making for other people. In this case, it's a beautiful handful of salt. Now, the salt bed season starts in the month of May. So if you find yourself in HANAPÄPÄ during the season of salt making, stop by the HANAPÄPÄ salt beds and see for yourself exactly how this ancient and traditional method of making the Hawaiian salt rich in the alaya red clay is made. The next mural that we're going to look at is on the Kaua'I Habitat for Humanity building. It was done in conjunction with 808 Urban and the Kalāheo system, which are the Hawaiian immersion schools, to celebrate 30 years of Hawaiian language immersion schools in a series called Ke Kanakolu. Ke Kanakolu is the number 30. When it comes to translating the names of the islands, Lanai, which means Day of Conquest, is the only one that we can translate. The first picture in the next mural provides an opportunity to explain some of the meanings of Kaua'I. Now, because the word Kaua'I has no translation, other people have said that the name of this island is Kaua'I, which means an abundance of food, or Kaua'I. Kaua'I makes sense because this is the island with the most perennial streams, and Waiwai is fresh water. It's also the word for wealth. And if you had an abundance of fresh water, well, that's a life-giving source. And therefore, there was an abundance of everything. Another explanation for the name of the island, Kaua'I, is if it was pronounced Kaua'I traditionally. And that means to be placed around the neck, like a lei, like a child that holds on to a parent, or the way in which loved ones give each other hugs. In the first picture of the next mural, we see a man carrying a child. This is indicative of the word Kaua'I. You wear a lei around the neck, much like a child holds on to an adult around the neck. Sensing there was more to the story here, I reached out to the community. I got a response from a man named Ishmael Stagner, who believes that it's a reference to a family member of his named Kalāheo, which means a fragrant lei, and that he is the oldest brother and was protective of his younger siblings. And of course, the young child sitting on his neck is symbolic of a lei. Ni'ihau is only 19 miles across the Kaulakahi Channel from the west side of Kaua'I, and therefore the families would often go back and forth between the two islands. In the 1880s, Kamehameha V sold the island of Ni'ihau to a missionary named Elizabeth Sinclair. She wanted it to be used as a sheep ranching island. Her descendants, the Robinsons, now own the island. Today there are less than 300 Native Hawaiians that reside on the island of Ni'ihau. No visitors are allowed, however. You can take a helicopter tour, though. And here we have a va'a kaulua, a double-hulled canoe. Many double-hulled canoes are being made today in traditional fashion and are sailing all around the world and are used as floating classrooms. We have many new captains on the horizon. Polynesians are reviving the ancient art of navigation without the use of any instruments, only natural elements. Kaua'I had its own unique poi pounder, pictured here with kalo, the plant that was used to make poi from its corn. Poi was the main staple of the Hawaiian diet. Kalo is one of the healthiest plants in the world. It can be eaten from the leaves, the flowers, down to the corn. It's high in folic acid and calcium and many other vitamins. Here are some examples of other Kaua'I poi pounders, and then the typical triangular shaped one that's found on all the islands, along with a numeke, a wooden bowl. Kalo was mashed on a wooden board, gradually adding water until it formed a paste. Hawaiians considered the kalo to be the oldest brother of the Hawaiian race. Therefore, it was understood that while there was the poi bowl on the table, there was to be no grumbling or arguing. We will learn why the kalo is considered the oldest brother of the Hawaiian race in another video. Other scenes depict historical events or legends about things that have happened here on Kaua'I. It also depicts unique things to our island. Here on Kaua'I, we have Mount Wai'ale'ale, the wettest spot on earth, and we have multitudes of waterfalls. We have stories about sacred and magical rocks, and even the mo'o, lizards. They are considered aumakua. Aumakua, your ancestors, could take forms as animals or natural elements. They could help you, but they could also punish you if you committed an offense. And this is the goddess Hina, dancing hula under the light of the mahina, the moon. There are many shark tales in Hawaii, one of them being that of Kuhai Moana. Kuhai Moana is said to be such a huge shark that when you think you're standing on the reef fishing, the reef begins to move and you realize you're standing on Kuhai Moana's back. He resides in the Kaulakahi Channel between Kaua'I and Ni'ihau. So whether you're an artist, an art lover, or you like to play at the beach or in the mountains, HANAPÄ'PÄ has everything. And as we start to head back south, we will once again drive by the Kaua'i Soto Zen Temple and see that beautiful tall statue of Kuan Yin. The Japanese, Chinese, Filipinos, Portuguese, and Puerto Ricans came to Hawaii in the 1880s to work in the sugar plantations and the pineapple fields. The Chinese were the first to be hired as contracted laborers and came over in the late 1830s and the 1840s to work on the first plantations that were started here in Koloa on Kaua'I. HANAPÄ'PÄ'S traditional name is HANAPÄ'PÄ, which means crushed bay. Because of the Alaya clay, we are susceptible to landslides when we have a lot of rain. Once you get a lens of water in between layers of the clay dirt, it's a self-perpetuating mechanism that causes the landslides. We usually have a number of them on the North Shore, but they happen everywhere on every island. And you can still see many places that represent old Hawaii plantation days. And as we head back south on Kaua'I Highway, we pass Port Allen again, and this time we're going to make a right-hand turn off of Kaua'I Highway, and we're going to go to New Mila. This is property that was once owned by the McBride Sugar Company in the 1890s. Today, it's used as the coffee plantations for Kaua'I Coffee Company. Let's talk a little bit about the sugar industry and just how the Kaua'I Coffee Company acquired the land for the Kaua'I coffee operation. In 1835, right here on Kaua'I on the south side, Ladd & Company, which was actually a company that had provisions for whalers that stopped in Hawaii for provisions, they were able to lease land from Kamehameha III for a sugar plantation. Traditionally, fee simple land was an unknown concept here in Hawaii until foreigners came and put pressure on the chiefs to sell land so that they could open up churches, number one, because the missionaries from the ABC-FM, which is the American Board of Commissioners of Foreign Ministries, they arrived in Hawaii in 1820, and they had not only conversion in mind, but shortly afterwards, there were other business prospects that they became interested in, such as sugar plantations, in which you need large tracts of land to grow sugar, and 3 gallons of water per sugar cube is needed. Traditionally, because land and water were communal and they were not owned by anybody, you have water rights that are now becoming a problem, especially for the native people. Sugar companies started to divert water. This left native Hawaiians without water to grow their kalo in a lo'i, which is a wetland taro patch. It deprived the native Hawaiian from being able to have water, life-giving water, as a resource in their own home. Water rights are still an issue in Hawaii, and some cases are still in the court system. As more and more sugar plantation companies and industries involved with sugar production popped up around the islands, sugar became king up until the year 2000. The sugar industry was all but gone in the Hawaiian Islands. But what would become of all of the land vacant from the sugar cane? New crops started to be grown and new industries were developed here in Hawaii. New crops started to be grown, such as corn and cacao or the cocoa bean. Here on Kaua'I, we have Kaua'I Chocolate Company. Due to Hawaii's rich volcanic soil, some of the world's best coffee is grown right here in the Hawaiian Islands. The Kaua'I Coffee Company sits on over 3,100 acres of land, and it has over 4 million coffee trees growing, and it makes Kaua'I Coffee the largest coffee grower in the United States. While visiting Kaua'I Coffee Company, be sure to stop in the Visitors Center so that you can sample some of the tasty 100% Hawaiian grown coffee. They have coffees that have a soft, fruity, Kaua'I blue mountain intensity. They have coffees that are chocolatey, dark roasted pea berry, and they have an exceptional range of coffees to satisfy any coffee lover's palate. They also offer flavors including coconut, caramel, vanilla, and my favorite, chocolate macadamia nut. Also, don't forget to try some of the toasty banana nut cream and hazelnut coffees. That's Kaua'I Coffee Company, located on New Mila Road in between Ele'ele and Kalāheo on the wonderful, beautiful island of Kaua'I. We might be leaving the Visitors Center, but enjoy the lovely view of the mountains and the acres of coffee plants as we head back towards Kalāheo. And we're at the intersection on top of the mountain in Kalāheo. Here we have the famous Kaua'I cookies, where you can pick up your Onolicious cookies that are guava flavored or perhaps macadamia nut cookies, and pies such as chocolate haupia pie and sandwiches. Kalāheo is a quaint small town. It's got great restaurants, a small inn, and a wonderful golf course that we're heading up to now called Kukui Olono. Kalāheo is a beautiful, bucolic rural town with the most spectacular views of the mountains and the ocean. And here's the local golf course favorite, Kukuio Lono, home of the famous rock Kaua'i. It's said in Hawaiian, "Ina ole oi I ike ya Kaua'i, a ole oi I ike ya Kaua'i." It's said that if you haven't seen Kaua'i stone, you have not seen all of Kauai. Kukuio Lono Golf Course has some of the most spectacular and breathtaking views from any golf course. Take time to make your reservations and go see Kaua'i at Kukuio Lono Golf Course in Kalāheo, Kauai. And we're going to finish our ride by going through the back roads of Kalāheo. Enjoy the ride as we holo holo and ike maka as we cruise and take in the views. And this is the old Laua'i pineapple cannery. Mahalo nui loa. Thank you all for joining me, Seashell Surf, and enjoying this beautiful journey from HANAPÄ'PÄ'S salt ponds through the back roads of the hidden gem known as Kalāheo. Until we meet again, ahui ho, ma lama pono, take care, and aloha.